So I've been contemplating running for the House for the second time. I don't really count the first time as being a real race because I didn't meet the number of signatures required to be a write in candidate. And as I've kind of been sitting back and just, weighing the pros and cons in my mind and whatnot, because we're about 3 weeks removed from when you can start to collect the signatures to qualify to be on the ballot. I couldn't help but flash back to how things went last time. And, the whole purpose of doing it the time that I did was just to kind of get a feel for how people are, the kind of responses that they give, the sorts of things that they say. And man, I was really astonished by the lack of ability to do what I feel is a very basic thing. Now, when someone signs their signature for you to, qualify to be, a candidate for an office, they have to put their name in print, in cursive, their address, and I believe something else. But those three things. And my best friend who lives in the district, did it in less than 2 minutes. It's a very short, quick process because it has the four little things on top of each other, and then like that guide you on how to do it. And you would think to yourself, okay, it doesn't really seem that tough, right? You sign your name a few times, put your address, and it's whatever. It doesn't really seem as if that's some huge thing. But it turns out, people will pretty much look for any reason to not do it. So just again, as someone who went to several neighborhoods making this attempt, I most often would have someone open the door. I say, hey, I'm a candidate for this office, House Representatives, whatever. I need signatures to qualify for the ballot, and the few people who actually are receptive will ask me, maybe what my positions are, or engage in some kind of dialogue with me, which is the part of it that I really liked because I actually got to talk to possible constituents. But the other people, who would hear my pitch would say, I'm not into that type of stuff. No, thank you. I remember I saw one person pull up to their home and I was like, oh, ma'am. And then right after I, basically like made a greeting or attempt at greeting, she said, not today, stuck her hand in my face. Not, of course, like not directly in front of me, but still. And I think the ones that stand out the most to me are just like the excuses. There was one guy who came outside and he said, I'm kind of busy right now helping my mom. And I couldn't help but almost want to laugh at just I guess your mom is like really very 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 sick to where you have enough time to come outside and tell me that you can't assist me, but not enough time to like sign the thing. Then there was the other person who they're two of them are on the same street. They tell you that they're too busy, right, to sign your thing after they come outside to tell you that they're too busy to sign it. And one of them really was kind of, I guess, the modern day. Well, yeah, I would say she was a Karen. She comes outside and she tells me, "Oh, I'm busy. I don't have the time for this. But maybe you can give me like one position." And then I mention some of my stances, and then she kind of has this back and forth with me about how the governor of California apparently can't do anything about the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of homeless people. And I was telling one of my relatives, he was like, "Oh, I'm surprised you didn't get the door slammed in your face." Like, well, that's not really how this works. If the person is asking me, like, they're basically doing a gotcha where they're gonna like try to catch you on like not knowing something. So when you actually speak about these topics as if you're aware of what's going on and with solutions that they can't prove have not been tried, they're not really in a position to be able to argue with you. And again, the unfortunate part is I don't have a problem with talking to people, but the fact that you're going to come outside and then tell me that you're too busy to sign my paper, but you're not too busy to have this exchange about what positions I may have, it just seems like a tease to me. One of my other favorite encounters was a lady that was like, she answered the door and she had like this kid tugging at her, and she's like, "Oh, do you have a website?" And I encountered this question 2 or 3 times, And I said no. And this is kind of where we have to get into just the stupidity of some of this stuff, like some of the just things people, formulate in their minds. So candidates have websites for the purpose of listing their positions, right? This person believes in climate change. This person believes we should have a investment in infrastructure with all these crumbling, horrendous roads. But you wouldn't ask for the candidate's website if you want to know their positions, which is what you can infer was her reason for asking it, if the person is right in front of you. And it's like, even if I had one, right, it still would not help me in the quest of getting signatures, because they're going to, like, if I had a website and I had a card, I said, oh yeah, here's my website. I'm gonna give them the card, they're gonna close the door, and then I'm gonna not have the signature. So like, they're basically, in the one way they could have assisted me, it still wouldn't have mattered anyway. And I'm just gonna make this very plain. I don't see the purpose of making a site if I can't guarantee that I'm going to qualify to even be a candidate. Like, imagine I make my me for Congress.com, and then you literally don't even have enough signatures to be on the ballot. So it just sits there, and I mean, like, just, it's stupid stuff. It's dumb. But what I thought was really interesting was that there's a lot of things I can give people credit for, in terms, like, I can see things from their perspective, right? Okay, I don't want to donate to candidates because I'm like, whatever. People are very picky about what kind of stuff they're going to financially support. And I even had one lady who was like, oh, I'm not going to sign your paper if I don't, know what your positions are, which I respected, and we had an exchange, and after I kind of had a back and forth with her, she signed it. And again, I'm all for telling people what I believe. I'm not afraid of, expressing myself. But what I find so interesting is the idea of, like, it basically being the equivalent of pulling, like, teeth, getting people to sign a paper. And what's so awful about, this in particular, is that when you think about how most people, when they get polled, they say Congress is horrible. They say the congressmen are, useless, ineffective. They're not making their lives better. All the stuff that I agree with. But then when they have a race where, let's keep it real, my opponent, and if I were to do a rematch, is not going to canvass, not going to really do anything to get reelected other than just run unopposed. And it's really sad that the one person that is, like, the most accessible, who they can physically see and talk with, and they don't give them the time of day. And it's like, again, I'm not saying, if I were elected, then everything would be so much, but it's just me saying that I find it really sad how you have this desire, to participate in politics, right? And just even to have, civil discourse in terms of just speaking to potential voters and just, people that live there. And whatever little thing they would have to do to contribute to that, much of which actually costs them nothing, like signing a piece of paper and putting their damn address on there, they couldn't be bothered. And it's, I guess I just have to kind of develop a sort of, what's the way of putting it? I don't want to say turn my brain off, but just, just accept, okay, well, most people have a problem with doing any damn thing, that, like, just at all, right? So I'll just accept, all right, well, maybe if I knock on 100 or 500 or 1,000 doors, then we can get the appropriate number. But it was really telling that the thing I liked the least was doing that. And it made me feel like I was asking for, because I was thinking to myself, again, this is, I get people they sit outside of different convenience stores, and they're like, hey, can you sign this to fund, Toys for Tots? This one guy was doing that. Oh, can you sign this to raise the minimum wage by $1? Oh, can you sign this to impose rent control? Just different things. And I've signed a lot of those not necessarily because believe in all of it. Like some of the stuff I'm not the biggest fan of, but it's like I don't really see where, like I can't comprehend where that would be a downside for me. And when my relatives was like, oh well, maybe a lot of them think it might be a scam. It's like, you show them the paper where this is an officially, generated by the city that we're in document that has their signature and all of the other, statements and just different prints that prove that this is a valid thing. But also, I'd like, just think about this. What could a person possibly do? Like, if they're at your house, they already know your address. So it's like, when they come to your place, like, hey, can you sign this so I can be a candidate? How is this going to negatively impact you? How does this, what could you possibly be scammed out of by someone who already knows where you live, having you write your name and your address on a paper that's got the official government seal on? It's weird, man. Everyone's got an excuse to not be helpful, and it goes back to the same position I had before, which was, there are a lot of people who may look at things and like admit this is not good, the state of affairs of most people in the U.S., but when it comes to doing anything about it, they're just not going to. It's like this really interesting complacency, because you did have some people who I barely even had to speak to for them to sign it, of like three or four different people, and it shows you that there are, in like, beneath all the cracks and crevices of indifference and in sometimes outright contempt, there are individuals who are like, yeah, this is wrong. We need to change this. We need somebody else. Um, and I do think it would be so like amazing to just knock on a bunch of doors and effectively be the only person truly running, because like I said, the representative themselves, you won't see do anything. Maybe they'll run a TV ad, which I didn't even see any of those, so probably not even that. But I find it really sad that's who is going to be able to just keep coasting to more and more terms, all because there's no real opposition. And I've really hated how much of a like effective like knife this year has been to me in terms of employment and being able to just have some stability. But because I think that has played a role in like disillusioning me and just, oh man, that things are never going to get any better. But I still feel the temptation to proceed with it anyway and like at least make some attempt. But I'll always marvel at people's reluctance to sign a paper. That'll never not be something I find comedic. Like, I get being opposed to donating, right? Your hard-earned money going to some candidacy that may or may not be successful. I get people being opposed to volunteering themselves. Oh, I gotta do all this other stuff, whatever. I don't have the time. But when people sit there and they tell you that they don't have 1 minute, 2 minutes to sign a paper, it's straight up Twilight Zone, man. All the while telling you that their congressperson is crap, like knowing that the person that represents them is trash, but we're not going to do anything to actually get them out of there.